How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Single Barrel Club. This month, we have a very special guest and a very special bottle. I am joined by Sean Josephs, the founder of Pinhook, which is what we're going to be talking about today, and also Mr. Lee Diaz. We all know Lee. Lee's been in almost all of these, so y'all know Lee. I don't no further introduction, but. Right before we even start, I just want to point out a couple of things about this. Is amazing bottle. We're going to talk about this. True small batch. It is a 5-year cash stream coming in just a tad over 119 and 119.1 proof. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. And Sean, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, man, midweek, it's sometimes tough to take a little time out. So we're glad you were able to make it.
It's my pleasure. So glad it worked out.
So Sean, I mean, true small batch, 2-barrel blend. I mean, the smallest of small batches you can get. And for a lot of people, this is what a lot of brands will consider a private selection. And it really is for us as well. What inspired you to do this true small batch format as like a 2 or 3-barrel blend, like kind of a small format blend within the scope of everything that Pinhook does? And maybe as we get into this, Kaden, let's start smelling this whiskey. I mean,
yeah. And I also got to point out from the time that I received this bottle when we were first talking about it, it's already changed a good bit. And like,
oh yeah,
normally whiskeys for me when they open up, it's always been a positive way. It's never been negative. I haven't had a bottle that long or anything that really goes bad. This has only got better. For me.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say off the bat, it's stone fruit, and I'll continue. I do want to hear what you have to say though. Oh yeah.
Oh well, I was just gonna say more broadly, like conceptually, I thought it was really interesting when I was first learning about bourbon, like back in 2005, that in wine, which was my background, the terms are incredibly important. Meaning, if you say in a wine from Italy, you say Reserva, compared to like a regular wine from that region, it requires more time in the barrel, more time in the bottle, and there are all sorts of other rules. And basically all the rules of things that sound special require a higher level of everything, right? And that could be from, you can only pick the grapes from this certain area and whatever. Mm-hmm. The whole point though is like, without getting in the weeds about wine, which I always love doing, but the whole point behind it is that you see these terms and you know you're getting a better product. Right? That's the whole point, right? And so I thought it was really funny, for lack of a better word, that you have this term, small batch, which, as we all know, or maybe some people don't know, literally has no definition.
Yeah.
Right? So you could dump 2,000 barrels into a tank and you could say it's a small batch, and you can dump 2 barrels into a tank and also call it a small batch. And so it's in no way, it doesn't tell the consumer anything about what they're getting. Right. Which would be a whole sidebar. I don't think makes a lot of sense. And I think there are tons of cool things that could happen in the world of bourbon that would, basically bottled in bond is the only thing we have that is kind of a clear marker of quality in a way. Right. In terms of saying, like, if you see bottled in bond, some specific things about that product, and all of those specific things drive a certain level of quality. Mm-hmm. Right. Anyway, I just thought it would be fun to play around with the notion that there was no definition and say, well, turns out because there's no definition, I can create something called true small batch, and I can decide what that is. I mean, it's not approved by the TTB, but they also approve the label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I think it was like, one, it's like having fun with this idea, right? But also the other thing, and this kind of, this is where I actually think Pinhook was at the forefront, is we were at the forefront of being transparent about being a non-distiller producer, right? And saying, which, by the way, super common in wine, super common in single malt Scotch, very much celebrated in those arenas. And for some reason, bourbon has always been the realm, for no reason that I can ever understand, that you like pretend that you're somebody else. Like, it's all like, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so, because we either source or contract distill, right? I'm not a distiller. I do not know how to distill. Like, my mom is would be equally capable of distilling or incapable as me. I literally don't know anything about it. I mean, I know some things, but I don't know how to do it. And so when we offer a single barrel, even though I'm proud of the single barrels, and it could be a single barrel of Castle and Key, it could be a single barrel of MGP, I also have to be, I'm always clear with people, like, we had nothing to do with this. Anyone could have bought this barrel. And so Pinhook, our whole ethos is that we blend, right? We find barrels and we blend them. And so I think the idea of blending and the true small batches are, interestingly, is not a Pinhook product, meaning we do not produce true small batches except in collaboration with, like, in this case, Lee. So we're blending with someone else. And it's, to me, even though I'm also proud of our single barrels, I mean, meaning it's like we have some barrels and some of them taste really good and people pick them. It doesn't really showcase what we do. What we do, and the whole point of Pinhook is we have no flavor profile. We're just trying to always blend the best whiskey that we can, is we have access to a bunch of barrels and we're trying to figure out which barrels, when you put them together, produce something really special. And so small batch or true small batch is a way of, one, like when I'm working directly with someone like Lee, or just broadly trying to explain it to a broader audience, as a way of saying, like, this is what we do. We sit down with 6 single barrels, take all 6 of them, and instead of saying which single barrel tastes the best, we're saying which 2 of these together produce a phenomenal whiskey. And I will say, and this is like, and you have to pardon the horse puns, but we always have to go there, but not to be on my high horse. But I think blending is more interesting than picking a single barrel. I think picking single barrel is awesome. But when you're blending, you're layering flavors. And I think you're going to produce something more complex. And so when I sit down to do a blend with anyone, and certainly when I sat down with Lee, I would say, okay, here's the deal. We're going to taste through these 6 barrels. 1 or 2 of them at random, I'm sure, are going to be awesome. And whatever barrel you like the best, we have to be able to beat that barrel in the blend. And we shouldn't stop until we do. Because somewhere in here, in the 30 some odd combinations that exist, right, is a 2-barrel blend that is better than any 1 barrel is on its own. And that's the beauty of blending.
Well, and Sean, I mean, that really results in, and let's start into this nose, like your experience starting with wine. I mean, what I've loved about a number of Pinhook releases, and specifically what we did with this true small batch, is there is a certain elegance to this liquid, right?
Yep.
Like there's a lightness to it. When I'm looking at the nose, like I got like florals, like for me, I got like rose and jasmine, for instance. Like I get some like orange zest, like some of that just vibrant like orange or citrus, like. But a lot of these elements are a little bit more elegant and elevated, not something you would expect from a 5-year bourbon, and definitely not something that you would expect in like a 2-barrel blend. Like I think that was one of the surprising parts of this. And if as you're following along, if you're nosing this, I mean, feel free in the comments, let us know what you're nosing too. But again, this is where it starts. Just, hey, this is a different whiskey, and we're going to introduce you to something that, although it's 119 proof, is way more elevated than I think people would normally expect from, again, a 5-year small batch.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think, it's interesting. So one thing that sort of exists in bourbon, but not really, but is a really important part of wine, is called benchmarking. So it's kind of like this idea that, like, there's a canon of the great wines of the world, right? Bordeaux, Burgundy, Napa, Barolo, Barbaresco in northern Italy, so on and so forth. And there are wines within each of those regions that are considered to be the top expression of it. And so whether you think they are or not, you have to taste those wines first. Because then otherwise you don't have a frame of reference. Like a bunch of people have been making wine for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then a lot of people have been tasting wine for all those years, and people have come to some sort of consensus about what the best wines are from these particular regions. Like, who are the people making the best of the best, right? It's such a key part of understanding wine. And then when you think about it from a wine perspective, you're like, well, why would that be? What makes that one the best? Why is that in the top tier of Bordeaux? Why is that in the top tier of Burgundy? And it actually, I don't know if this is like too basic, but I don't hear people talk about this a lot in bourbon. It comes down to something actually very simple, to one word called complexity, right? What we're all yearning for when we're excited about a bourbon is the idea that when we put our nose in the glass, we feel like every time we come back to it, it's like, huh, this is really interesting. Now I'm getting this. First I was getting floral. Now I'm getting fruit. Wow, now that I think about the fruit, I'm getting tropical fruit, but I'm also getting cherry. Like, it's just the aromas keep pulling you back in. And that would be the same of wine. That's why people, you could say, oh, wow, it's so ridiculous that someone would pay $2,000 for a bottle of wine, let alone a bottle of bourbon, whatever. But what you should be paying for is this heightened level of complexity, right? Then the next thing you would be paying for is the same thing on the palate. You taste it and you're like, oh my God, now I'm getting this, now I'm getting that. It's so complex. And then you'd also be thinking about the journey across your palate. So it's not just that you're tasting a lot of things, it's that there's a harmonious journey of those flavors as they travel across your palate. Then you would expect great texture. These are all things I would call benchmarks of quality, irrespective of flavor profile. A long lingering finish, right? If you had complex aromas and complex flavors in a short finish, then whatever you're tasting is losing points. And this is a point in wine, and it's certainly even more of a point in bourbon, is what we would call alcohol integration. Meaning, yes, there's a lot of alcohol, but are we tasting and smelling alcohol as a separate note that's sort of like broken out? Or is the alcohol part of the fabric of the whiskey? Totally. And so it seems incredibly well integrated, right? And so if you think about these benchmarks that I would call like benchmarks of quality, complex aromas, complex flavors, harmonious and balanced journey of those flavors across your palate, great texture and mouthfeel, a long lingering finish, and great integration of alcohol, right? Those become, at least in our world with Pinhook, where we have no flavor profile, those become the things that we're striving for.
Absolutely.
Because those are the things that I was taught were like the markers of, that's why people would pay a lot of money for a cognac. That's why people would pay a lot of money for a wine, because it has all this complexity and the way the complexity comes together. And so just to finish the thought, because I feel like I've been talking for a minute, is when you sit down to blend, if you don't have a homogeneous flavor profile, because this is the truth and it's not a criticism. If you talk to most brands that work in the traditional way, they're just going to tell you about their flavor profile.
Yep.
And every time they blend, they already know what it tastes like before they start blending, because they just have to hit the flavor profile. And so if you think about the potential to hit the best possible thing from these 6 single barrels, only blending 2 of them together, and you know that your goal is just like, well, no one says that there's a flavor profile. So it doesn't have to taste like cinnamon or caramel, or it might, but it doesn't have to taste like anything. And you're just looking for this broader sense of like, well, and you guys, I think, might be able to, I'm like a little locked into my thing, but you guys engage more with consumers in different ways, is like, well, what's everyone excited about? Presumably it's because, sure, some people are locked into their hazmat thing, or they're locked into like anything from Buffalo Trace is the best. But when people get past that, and I do love Buffalo Trace, just to be clear. But when people get past that, no matter how I tend to talk in wine terms, because that's how I learned, but they might just be like, man, this thing smells crazy. Like I just, every time I smell it, I smell something different. Every time I taste it, like, oh my God, I tasted this. And it's like, that's what makes people excited.
Well, and I think Pinhook too, because there isn't a standard profile, it gives you so much more room to focus on excellence. Like, Kanan, what are you getting on the palate? Like, as you're tasting this, I know we've both stolen a number of sips here. I mean, what's that palate look like? And I mean, having had a number of Pinhook barrels, would you expect that from Pinhook? Like, I think good. We agree.
No.
But at the same time, like, the approach is wonderfully Pinhook, and the starting barrels were just a wide range of what's being developed by the brand. So the result should give you something that says, wow, like Pinhook can do this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I actually
I
think with every release it does that.
I think a little bit before we were talking, I do the bourbon hunts all the time. I'm always in the stores, and anytime a store has the gold wax, that's the 8-9 year vertical. I mean, I just give that so much praise. That is one of the best bottles to recommend that will never let you down. It's always going to be a hit for me with a lot of Pinhooks. And I can say overall, Pinhook as a brand has never, I say never burned me. And I've had it quite a few brands, big brands, where I'm very excited for a new release, very excited for something to come out, or even a store pick. And I spend my hard earned money on it, like a lot of people that are watching this stream will, and feel a little burned. Like, man, I feel a little let down. I've never had that happen to me for a Pinhook before. For me, on the nose, Sean, we were talking. Sean and I both live in the South Louisiana to be exact. And I don't even know if it's considered a talent, but have the skill to smell rain. You know what I'm talking about? When it's like wind outside, everything.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels the same. Like it's just dark. This whole whiskey as a whole is very dark. And when I was tasting it quite a few times, I'm like, this tastes familiar, but not at the same time. Like I don't know what this is. It almost is so dark and sweet to me. I got the rose, like you mentioned, Lee. Didn't pull that at all until you said that. And then I'm like, holy, that happens a lot. We all know that. When someone points something out, I love when that happens. And it really just opens either your nose or your taste buds to what that person's experiencing. Now you can experience it together. It is so dark and it reminds me a lot of like a port wine, Tokai, something almost finished, which is crazy that this is not finished. It is like that sweet, that viscous and oily of a mouthfeel that, yeah, it reminds me of like a finished whiskey cigar blend, if you will. This would pair very nice with a cigar, I think, for sure.
Yeah,
It's dark.
And this palette, I think, is so different from the nose too. Like I get some like complementary notes, but really I get a whole bunch of new flavors that do not are it evolves, right? And so like I get like toasted oats, like almost like the honey nut Cheerios, like some toasted oats in there.
Yes, on the
Which,
palate, I did too.
yeah,
Big
which
time.
is super fun.
And one thing Sean, so I got someone in Louisiana here. It's hard for me to point out this tasting note sometimes, so I think of something similar that people around the country might have had instead. Pecan praline. That kind of oat, nutty, little bit that you're getting. I get some pecan praline on this, which is great. I mean, pecan praline is such a. Sorry, Lee, have you had that before?
Man, it's been a long time, so I'm gonna have to.
It's
jump
just
on
a
that.
really, really sweet, like bark treat almost that you can bite off of, and that pecan is not like a. I know it sounds crazy. Peanuts have more of a nutty taste than a pecan would. Pecans are a little bit different, right? But it has that, pecan praline to me. I love it.
Well, it's also like, to me, the praline is like a balance of this sort of like nutty, savory, almost a little bit bitter, not in a bad way. I think that's not necessarily a bad term, balanced with the sweetness.
Yep.
And that's what's so nice about it. I think that's why praline's like, I think without, and I guess you could say, no, I'm actually not going to say this. I was going to suggest another nut that's not a pecan. But anyway, I think the point is like, you would need a nut that's like it. I was talking to someone about cocktails tonight, right? Like typically when you make a cocktail that has citrus, you basically split the difference. Like you don't split the difference. There's an equal amount. People can play around with ratios, but there's an equal amount of citrus and sugar. They balance each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And some people like to maybe tweak the citrus up a little and the sugar a little bit down.
Yeah.
They create a balance, right? You need the acidity because it gives you brightness and freshness. But I mean, this might sound really dumb because no one would ever try this, but like try to make a whiskey sour with no sugar.
Yeah.
Like it would really
just
suck.
Sucking up. Yeah.
That would suck.
You really wouldn't enjoy it. And if it's made well, the sugar isn't making the drink sweet. It's making it balanced.
Sure.
And anyway, I think that's actually why a pecan praline works so well, is because just to be clear, the sugar part is like really, really sweet.
Yeah.
But pecans have like a nice bitterness to them, like a tannin even, right? Like the way the skins are. And so they play off each other in a really nice way.
Yeah.
Joe in our comments said he's done it. Don't do it. It's awful.
Yeah. If you're ever wondering, I think what's really fun though, for anyone who's listening who likes to make cocktails, is like, once you understand the basic principle I personally enjoy making a margarita with no, Cointreau, whatever you're going to use. I mean, um, triple sec, Grand Marnier, whatever. Like I think there's like a cleaner version, which is really just lime, simple, or actually I like agave nectar and tequila. But if you think about this simple ratio, 2 ounces tequila, 1 ounce agave nectar or simple, 1 ounce lime, and you start there, and you know that having no sugar would be terrible. And then you say, but what if I like it a little more tart? Why don't I try going 3/4 agave and 1 ounce lime?
Yeah.
Like start fiddling. I think it's actually really fun if you like cocktails, is like you just take a basic concept and just start tweaking these little tiny elements of the ratios and kind of see like, oh, actually now that's too tart for my palate. Or now I tried going like a little more sweet and a little less lime, and now it's too sweet, or now it's perfect.
Yeah. By the way, Lee, if that's the Joe I'm thinking of, I've seen this man take a frother and put mayonnaise with whiskey to see if, he does some pretty wild experiments. What else has he done? Do you know? He's done straight lemon juice. Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Joe, how dare you? How dare you?
How dare you, mayo?
Yeah, so I'm gonna make everybody mad. On the finish here, one of the tasting notes I get that everybody hates is like that marzipan. And the reason I sometimes get that is I grew up Southern California, See's candy every holiday, every birthday. My grandma got me See's candy, and that dark chocolate marzipan was one of my favorite constantly. So I'm probably one of the few people that actually really knows what marzipan tastes like, because that was like, that was the chocolate I always got, which is kind of like this kind of silky, almost nutty, but not quite, like almost caramel, but not quite. And kind of
milk chocolate? Is milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
So it's dark chocolate and what?
Marzipan.
Which is what? What's the base of marzipan? Like it's nutty. It's also
is it just dark chocolate?
It's dark chocolate outside, marzipan inside, which is kind of your nutty, caramelly,
nougat.
Put that all together, blend it up, and then it's
But I think that like that. I mean, it's a version of the pecan praline.
Oh, maybe
it sounds similar.
I mean, I think they're very different from each other, but it's balancing a nuttiness with a sweet.
Like you said, like I said, I mean, this thing, I don't. There's another brand, Dark Arts, and there's a local store to me who did a Dark Arts pick recently, and they did a white port wine. I didn't even. I'm not that like, again, when I think port wine, I'm thinking red. I didn't even know they had a white port wine. And they did. Oh, here it is. Look, they finished it in that.
Sure.
And they almost taste similar, which is so crazy to me that was a wet wine barrel when they got it, and they pulled. It's not that like unimaginable that they pulled that much complexity and flavor out of that because it was wine, and it's a delicious whiskey. That's a great store pick, killer. This was blending, and like you said, you brought it up earlier. I'm glad you did. A lot of people will bad talk it, will shame it, whatever it may be, when it comes to sourcing NDPs, anything like that. I've personally had some of my favorite whiskey. There's a good variety behind me, and you can't see everything. Some of my favorite NDPs, though, have put out some of my favorite whiskey that I've ever had. And it really boils down to either one, like you said, picking the right barrels. I love doing single barrel picks as well, but I'm also in agreement with you. My favorite thing in the world is blending something. And it's happened on barrel picks before for the channel where we've done barrel picks. And there was something that was so good. I was like, let's just see what it tastes like, blend it together. And I'm like, there's no way we could try to tell people that a single barrel of this bottle is better than this blend that we just did. Because we all know this is much better than that pick. And that pick was already killer. So, I like blending.
And I think Sean doesn't give himself enough credit in that blending experience, too, because I think what Pinhook does for the buyer, like myself, is really curate an experience, right? They've already kind of thought through the barrels that you're going to taste through, and now they really kind of guide you in that experience and that methodology and that process. And Sean, maybe you can, one of the closing thoughts, and there was a fan question about your first 20 barrels. So we're going to close on that question. We'll get there, but of just, how you're curating those barrels, like the first 5 or the 5 that we're tasting through, so that it's still a great. I think this is still an incredible representation of Pinhook. For me as
Yep.
the buyer, when we taste through the 5, I'm thinking there's alpha barrels, meaning those super standout, bright flavors and everything like that. There's kind of that one or those 2 beta barrels, which are like the really great support ones.
Yep.
And then there's like one that you're like, I don't really know what to do with this. This is like
Yeah.
my X Factor barrel. And the quick learning I had is the 2 alpha barrels won't work. The 2 beta barrels might, but probably won't either. It's really a mix of one from each, from each of 2 of those tiers, because the 2 really bright, awesome ones are almost in conflict, right? You get 2 alphas. We kind of see this in life too. 2 alphas don't really work.
Yep.
You kind of need your support cast in creating a blend.
Yeah, you don't know who's going to play nice together in the sandbox, so to speak.
Mhm.
But I think what's cool too, what you guys are alluding to is, I think if somewhere in that you can identify a style that would be Pinhook, it would be that if we're focused on complexity and nuance, that people would say there's like an elegance and sophistication to any Pinhook that you pick up. And that would be the common thread, even though from a flavor profile standpoint, they could have nothing in common, right? And that's what's so interesting to me. I do think too, just to go back to the NDP thing, long before I ever contemplated, starting my own company, I just, as someone who had come from wine, I just didn't understand the issue, which is why, and I don't know if everyone knows this, I'm not going to like do the whole Pinhook thing, but like in thoroughbred horse racing, a Pinhook is when you buy a baby thoroughbred based on its lineage to try to sell it for a profit when it's mature. So you're buying something young to sell it when it's mature. So that's what a friend of mine does for a living in Kentucky. And so we connected the idea that we were pinhooking bourbon. So we built transparency into our name, basically saying like, we're proud of the fact that this is what we do. There are plenty of people who distill great product. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think the world needs another distiller. Like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but like everyone goes to Vendome and they get a beautiful copper still, like, and people we do sweet mash, we do sour mash, we're doing a partial column to a doublet. Like people can talk about all these technical things, but at the end of the day, I don't know that anyone has anything like super revelatory to bring to the world of just pure distillation, right? Sure. You take your raw material, you produce a clean product. It's a white whiskey. You put it in a barrel. The type of barrel you choose, where you age that barrel, and how you choose to put the barrels together is where a lot of the magic happens, right?
We were talking about that right before. I remember saying right before we went live, we have like an extra 10 minutes before this goes live just to kind of chat about some things that I think it really boils down to where the whiskey is, because I have right here. Whoa, I almost dropped that. This is one of my favorites. This 9-year vertical. This is a single barrel as well. And I just said how much I love this. And for a while, I was saying on my videos, everything, they must get good MGP. Like that's something I say about good MGP brands that I really love. They must get really good MGP. Well, Sean, if you don't mind saying, like, how old was this when you bought this?
Yeah, it was 1 year old.
1 year old.
So it's, at this point, aged almost 9 years at Castle and Key. And so I think if you were to taste in a world where obviously, again, I had nothing to do with the distillation, nor did anyone who buys MGP barrels, where those barrels being stored, and start thinking about how different the climate is, it's such a huge factor. That actually gets back to the NDP thing too, because this was my point of view at the time, still my point of view, is look at all the big guys, the Heaven Hills and the Jim Beams, and if you look at especially their international labels, they are producing hundreds of labels from 3 mash bills or 4 mash bills. So why is that any different than someone buying Jim Beam from Jim Beam, saying like, I'm going to take these barrels, age them over here, and then I'm going to blend them in a way that is completely antithetical to the way that you blend, right? Like, I actually think we have a thing called Collaboration Series where in the past, we've like bought barrels from a different distillery. And then I also have a collaborating blender. And this is what's a really cool thought. We bought 25 barrels from Still Austin, and we did a 20-barrel blend with my friend Garrett Oliver, who's been brewmaster at Brooklyn Brewery for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
People at Still Austin and fans of Still Austin could recognize the juice on a certain level, and on the other hand, say it doesn't taste anything like Still Austin.
Wow.
Because they blend to a flavor profile. So imagine just think about this in a very simple way. If you take some Still Austin barrels and you're like, and I don't mean this, no offense to them, but you're like, doesn't matter what your flavor profile is.
Throw out the
throw out the thing. We're starting at 0. You guys spent a long time figuring out what you think is the best expression that you want to replicate. And we're just saying, like, you have 25 barrels. I have no idea what these 25 barrels are like compared to the rest of the barrels that live in your universe. I just know we have these 25. We're blending 20 of the 25. So that's where the variability lives. Which of these 20 of the 25 taste best together? And the result of that could be a very, very delicious whiskey that doesn't taste like Still Austin.
Yeah.
And that's the whole fun of it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this 2-barrel small batch, having these be from Castle and Key, which, what is it? Is it the world's largest rick house in the U.S.? Sorry, the world's largest rick house?
I think their claim to fame with Warehouse, the long brick one, is that it's the longest rick house of its type in the world. So it's
there we go.
Whatever 4-story brick house that's 3 football fields long.
Jeez.
Yeah, I couldn't run it. It was like,
it's crazy.
I was like, that's not happening.
It's wild, and the proofs are dropping. So what's the proof on that single barrel right there?
This one is 114.6.
Okay, so barrel entry at MGP is 120.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty good drop.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. That's a pretty cool fact. I think I'm sure Lee maybe knows, but a lot of my viewers probably don't even know that either.
So our 8-year vertical rye blend that won the American Rye Whiskey of the Year at Ascot Awards is cask strength at 108 proof, and barrel entry at MGP is 125.
That's nuts.
So there are barrels in there that are just like dropping insane proofs. And I think it's like producing, obviously, it's not about what's better. It's just like, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think with that, Lee, you have any closing remarks? Anything you want to say about this bottle? Is there any left? If anybody wants to grab a backup?
Yeah, there are a few. Actually, this hasn't even hit the market yet. So we held this off. And actually, we held it off till next week because we have a great special announcement on this bottle that will come out next Thursday, because we're in embargo until next Thursday to be able to talk about this. But we're super stoked for just the accolades that this bottle is about to receive.
Are you allowed to say the price?
I don't actually know it off the top of my head, honestly.
I can say, I don't want to say your price, but it's incredibly affordable.
I was about to, and look, I know closing remarks, we're getting there, and I didn't mean to cut you off either, but one thing about Pinhook as a whole that I want to thank you personally, since I don't know if we'll get to chat again, thanks for being pretty affordable on almost everything. I could go into a liquor store, trust, like I said, I've never gotten burned yet, trust that store pick is going to be very solid. Sometimes I'll see store picks for $50. The most I've ever had to pay for a Pinhook bottle was $90. And that was probably for a gold label 9-year.
Exactly.
And it's phenomenal. So thank you for being affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's an important part. What actually got me into bourbon was that I was working at a very fancy restaurant in New York called Per Se, which at the time was ranked the 8th best restaurant in the world. And we were routinely, I know this will sound crazy to people, but we were routinely opening bottles of wine that cost $5,000 to $10,000 on the wine list. And some of those wines don't live up to the price. And at the time, and this is like 2005, I started getting into tasting bourbon. And in a world where no one had gotten into Pappy yet or any of these things, tasting Elijah Craig 18-year, which was a $48 retail bottle.
Man,
I was just super impressed. So my whole impression of bourbon is this incredibly delicious, non-perishable product. If you think about it compared to wine, where it's like, when you open it, you have to drink it. non-perishable, super affordable, super delicious, super complex, and really inexpensive. And so part of Pinhook, even though obviously we could have gone in a different direction, was to lean into like not even so much a strategy, it's just philosophically, that's what made me love bourbon, was that it was approachable. And I think that one thing people don't think about enough is, I mean, it really needs to taste like the price,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when you taste a bourbon, like our entry level product is like $37 on the shelf, orange wax, green wax, everyday bourbon and rye. We have a 5-year cast strength at $55. Obviously, you're bumping up in proof and age and all these things. And by the time you get to a 9-year bottle at $90, you should feel like, by the way, a $90 bottle in your house is like $6 a pour.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying to pour it at home. And so, yeah, you should feel like, and I'm not saying that that's like cheap, but it's not crazy expensive to think about, you know.
I always break it down in years too. You're paying $10 a year. For
$10
that
a year.
aged.
That's
Yeah.
old school. And I guess that's what we stick to, because that's mostly what you'll see in our pricing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Sean, it's been a pleasure working with you and working on this selection. I mean, I think just in True Small Batch and the experience we had last year in making this, just learned so much about not only your process, but really kind of your vision and heart behind the work. And I think that
Thank you.
you had mentioned this, just my closing thought, you had mentioned the word elegance. That's
Yeah.
actually the word that I use when I'm expressing what Pinhook delivers. Like oftentimes there is just this elegance that you don't get even from this 5-year whiskey, right? And you get it here. And I think that's oftentimes unmatched at this age. And I think it's something that even, let's say you don't have a profile, I do think you have a style, which is to be elegant no matter what the age might look like. And so super excited for what's going to happen for the next few years in Vertical. Also super excited to see what the evolution of these Castle and Key small batch blends look like over the next few years as well. So
Thank you.
cheers to you, man. Really
Thank
enjoy
you so
it.
much. I really appreciate it. And that's, yeah, I think in a world where, like I said, everything tends to be more about notes and profile, if we could be known for complex, elegant, nuanced, well-structured whiskeys, which again are all kind of like wine terms, but like just change the way people think about it a little bit, and open up people's minds, open up the palate a little bit, to think about things a little bit differently but at the end of the day, it all just needs to taste good, right? I mean, I think that's...
Yeah.
Well, Kanan, as we close, do you want to give any sneak peek into or thoughts on what's coming in the month of May? Where are we? Jeez Louise. Because we've been talking a lot of rye in the comments.
Yeah.
There's some rye coming in May.
It's a Bardstown, right?
I mean, is it?
I don't know. It might be finished in something pretty cool or expressed something pretty cool in it too. I'm excited for that one. That one will be coming out. The last rye. I guess we did do a Wild Turkey 101, and that was killer. I have the samples here I'm looking at, and I'm probably going to try them again tonight. That was one of my tops, was the one that's going to be coming up for May. Very excited for that one. We picked a good one. I'm really, really pumped about that. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much. We got a little bit of extra time tonight, so appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sean, for taking the time. I'd love to link up with you soon, especially since you're just 2 hours away.
100%. The Lafayette blend is coming soon.
Okay, let's do it. That's exciting.
We'll put a crawfish on the back.
Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you all in the next one. So, also, this is